Well, for our last episode of the year, I'm bringing on Lee Chapman from the TREW Crew, and this is a bit of an annual tradition. We unpack what we believe to be the most significant areas of investment for the coming year. So you won't want to miss this. I know we're all deep in planning for next year, and I think it'll be a helpful episode. We'll talk about some trends, and Lee will share the number one thing that she feels you should invest in out of everything you could do. Let's do this.
Welcome to Content Marketing Engineered, your source for building trust and generating demand with technical content. Here is your host, Wendy Covey.
Hi, and welcome to Content Marketing Engineered. On each episode, I'll break down an industry trend, challenge, or best practice in reaching technical audiences. You'll meet colleagues, friends, and clients of mine who will stop by to share their stories. And I hope that you leave each episode feeling inspired and ready to take action. Before we jump in, I'd like to give a brief shout out to my agency, TREW Marketing. TREW is a full-service agency located in beautiful Austin, Texas, serving highly technical companies. For more information, visit trewmarketing.com. And now, on with our podcast.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Content Marketing Engineered. Actually, it's not just another episode, it's the final episode of 2025. And Lee, it's become our tradition for you to come onto the show as the very last episode to talk about trends for the coming year. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you back.
Thanks, Wendy. It's always fun to do this. I think this is like our third or fourth year running to do this Trends podcast. And it's always sets up the year, I think. It ends the year on a high note, and then it gives us a lot to look forward to for next year.
It does. And we both showed up in our holiday sweaters. In fact, I'll show those of you watching. I got Mary on mine. So we're feeling festive.
We are feeling festive. That's right.
Yeah. Well, when I reflected on this time last year, one of the big things that stood out was just AI, right? We couldn't talk enough about it last year, but significantly, we just hit the 3-year anniversary of ChatGPT's launch. Can you believe it's been 3 years?
In some ways, it feels like it's been more than 3 years, and in some ways, it feels like it's been less. But yeah, 3 years, right? It really changed everything. It was December 1st, and we're just a few days past that. And yeah.
And our world in marketing has really changed and shifted because of large language models, because of generative search, for all the reasons. So what's the biggest change that you see headed into 2026 when it comes to large language models?
Yeah, I feel like AI has really leveled the tactical playing field, right? Last year when we did this podcast, we talked about like experiment, try everything, like do all the tactics, be in all the places, so that we could really test what was happening as AI was shifting our inbound marketing playbook that so many of us relied upon for years and years and years, which was fueled by content. And so AI comes on the scene and we decide, oh, great, we can use this to create even more content. And then AI and algorithms and large language models really changed the game. And it became not about quantity, but about quality. And so I feel like what we need to sort of get back to, it's kind of like a retro trend, right? Is just differentiated strategy. So with everyone creating more content, more ads, more automation, we can do it really fast. But what we're seeing out there and we're hearing from the folks that we're working with is that things are starting to really sound the same. And I think it's making everyone feel a little bit overwhelmed. And we're seeing this need as we work on website redesigns for content that provides clarity, that goes deep into technical specs and proof points, and really highlights your authentic expertise so that you stand out through your clear value proposition, through your unique brand messaging, and that you're making strategic channel choices. And we'll talk about that in a minute, because really we've seen things change and shift across channels over these last 3 years too.
Yeah, I feel like this time last year, we were certainly beating the drum about don't just crank out just generic crap content and add to the sea of sameness. You need to stand out. But a lot of people didn't follow through with that. I think the temptation, and perhaps for more junior marketers tackling technical subjects they don't feel comfortable with, it was just so tempting, right, to have these engines write good enough content. But we're seeing that that really doesn't work, and it's not helping you be found in generative search as well as Google. And boy, are those becoming more and more important, right? We're seeing a lot of referrals coming in from these large language models.
Yep. We have definitely seen that in our business. And I think that's sort of a great lead in to like number two is when you're getting found on AI, like, right, a lot of times we're seeing that AI is going to answer the question for you. So years ago, we were like, okay, you need to write like 101 how-to content, introductory educational content. Now, AI is able to provide that answer when somebody types in a Google search. So we've seen more and more people going into ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and doing searches for solutions within those AI tools. There you're getting a bit more depth, but sometimes people aren't getting found. And so we'll talk about, there's a lot of different ways to work that. And some, again, kind of what's old is new again. But at some point, people are getting to your website. And when they get to your website, that's really where, again, I'm going to keep beating this drum on differentiation. That's really where you have to be differentiated to stand out. And we're sort of seeing two things in regard to websites right now. Either it's an old, outdated website with hundreds or thousands of pages that's more like a museum or an archive. It's not performing well. It's got confusing navigation. More and more, right, we're talking on social media about zero-click content. So people don't have an appetite for clicking. So when they're getting to these old, cluttered websites and they're having to click a lot, they're dropping off. They're going back to that AI search and they're going on to the next site. Another challenge on the flip side is that you've got a modern looking site that's really beautiful. Think like brochure sites we used to talk about back in the early 2000s, but they're light on content. They don't have any technical depth or specs or any kind of case studies, proof points. So we know engineering and technical buyers, that's what they're looking for. So really your website is in this kind of sea of sameness AI world. When they get to your website, you've got to be really differentiated there. That's the last kind of frontier of the credibility check that people are going to look through before they go through their buyer's journey and end up, filling out a contact us form or getting in touch with your sales team. So really that differentiated website.
So I want to make sure I understood. So shallow websites, definitely a mistake, right? Because you're not showing your points of credibility. You're not backing up your story. But then I love what you called it, the museum. And I could think of several large companies that struggle with the museum and they're afraid to cut any pages. So why is that badly? Because people get lost or things are dated?
Our attention spans are shortening, as we've seen over the last decade, even more so with AI. So if they get to your website and they can't find what they're looking for, it's too many clicks, or you've got a cluttered, really lengthy navigation, just thinking about how to do cleanup and follow best practices and streamline your content. It's always been important to have a really strong, clean information architecture. And I think this is a really good opportunity to do an audit. The good news is you've got all this content and some of it's probably serving you really well, but doing a deep dive audit, mapping your content. We always talk about in our website strategy projects, your keep, kill, create content, and how can you maybe repurpose some of that older content that maybe has really high search traffic, is really valuable, but that's buried 3 levels down. How can you repurpose that and surface that up on your higher level product or solutions pages so people can more easily find out when they're getting to your site?
Yeah. And I know sometimes we'll find that clients we work with, or, we're just starting to work with them, or auditing their stuff and finding that while they're attracting traffic, it's not the type of traffic they want. It's not quality leads because they have a blog post or some sort of web page that's doing well in search, but it's not representative of what they do and what they're great at. And so even though that page is gaining traffic, if it's not the right kind of traffic, it's not serving you. So don't be afraid to kill it and, explain why the traffic is is down, but better.
That's right. And it's just noise. And it's not, again, it's not really differentiating you. And it's probably content that several other companies could talk about. It's not really unique to you. And so I think for next year, it's differentiation, but it's really diving deep, and honing in more on your niche so that you're standing out and people can clearly get to your site and know what you are, who you serve, and how you can help solve their problem.
Okay. Okay, well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about events. So, COVID, when was COVID now? 4 years ago? 5 years?
5, yeah.
In the rear view. And ever since the world opened back up, obviously trade shows have come back. They're a really significant budget line for many engineering companies. So what do you see people doing wrong, and how do they need to approach trade shows differently to make them work better for the company in 2026?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Events are back. They're booming. Since the pandemic, people really want that sense of community. I think, too, it's that thing that LLMs and AI tools can't replicate. It's that need for connection, for human contact, right? And from talking to other real people. So I think events are going to be continuing to be big for 2026. But I think one of the things we've seen is swag over substance, is what I'll call it. Like, we're back to the swag of the 2010s, and swag is great. And we've seen some really cool examples of swag, not just the same old, same old. So not to say don't do swag, but think about the substance of your booth overall. Is it on brand? Is it on message? Do you have compelling, unique images? Do you have a really strong demo that you can share? Do you have subject matter experts that are speaking in technical sessions or parts of panels? Are you doing personalized pre-event outreach? Are you leveraging co-marketing partnerships to be in their booth, have them in your booth? Are there some unique experiences, dinners, smaller sessions that you can do to engage your prospects that are there, your customers that are there, your partners, right? There's so many great touch points at events. It just feels like some of the strategy around the events is getting missed by just checkboxing. We're going to the event and we're sending a bunch of people there. And as you said, it's a huge budget line item. But I think the trend for 2026 is doing events smarter and more strategically so that you're maximizing what you're getting out of that event.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like so many times we get caught up in just the booth structure itself, or how thick should the carpet be, and some of all the million little details that go into planning a trade show. But the marketing strategy around that show is so important, because, like you said, it's a huge budget and huge investment. So do it right. Do it right. I always find that webinars are a great call to action for post show, and not utilized as much as they could be.
I think you're absolutely right about that. The post-show piece is just as important as the pre-show. Like, what do you do with all those contacts you've gathered during the show? What's your follow-up, right? We know it needs to be really timely. Again, it needs to be personalized. And I feel like a lot of times after a trade show, people get back and they're tired, or they're off to the next trade show, or they've got something else going on. But how do you kind of keep following up and nurturing those conversations that you started at the event? It's a big investment. It's a big budget investment, and it's a big time investment. And it's tempting to just like dump and run when it's over, but it's really following up and sticking to it so you get the most out of it.
Yeah. I like that. So Lee, earlier we talked about differentiation, and that makes me think about content and what we're seeing on what types of content to create, where to put that content. I'm curious what you've seen with things like white papers and ebooks versus doing more social posts and long form articles. So just give me your take on content, having been through this year.
Yeah, I think it's interesting there too. Like, back to, there's the attention span is shortening, but for engineers and technical audiences, you really have to prove it. And they want the technical depth, and they will still read white papers if they're really unique and they're valuable. And they include specs and graphs and charts and approach and all those nuts and bolts, CAD diagrams, all those things that we know engineers really respond to. And sort of the flip side is a webinar. Can you take a white paper that's already high performing? Can you turn it into a webinar? Can you pull in a subject matter expert, somebody really engaging on your team? That's an area for thought leadership too, right? So not only is it great and engaging lead generating content, it's a way to build thought leadership for folks within your team. So I think just a few, little shifts there. More and more, I hear people talking about the need for case studies, and we always get the question about how do we get permission when we're doing something really cutting edge with a customer that doesn't want to share their secret sauce of what we're doing with them? How do we get permission to use them? How can we build case studies that share those proof points without giving away everything? And so again, always looking for creative ways to do that. Can you do an unnamed case study that gives enough information for somebody to understand what you do, the problem you solved, the tools that you used, and the results that you achieved? And I think that's the biggest thing. Time is money. How much time did you save? Efficiency gains? Did you get to market faster? All of those things are things that should be highlighted more. I feel like that's getting harder and harder to do, but that content is a trend that never goes out of style. So I think keeping kind of case studies, can also turn them into videos. So back to attention span, like some people want to read a case study. Other people would rather hear in the customer's voice what you did with them, how you worked with them, how you solved the problem. So is there an opportunity, maybe again at one of these trade shows or events, where you've got a customer that's going to be there? Can you take time to get in a side room and shoot a short customer case study video? It doesn't have to be uber produced and perfect, right? You can shoot some of these really well with your iPhone and a microphone. So think about easy, time efficient ways to kind of capture this content.
Yeah, fair. And you mentioned having that subject matter expert on the webinar being the face of content, but I've seen, in addition to that, just having that person be the face across multiple places, right? Whether it's presenting at that conference or authoring that article that's placed in a technical publication. So how important is it, one, to have a spokesperson, and two, to have that person consistently represent that business, across time, you think?
I think it is important. I think it's that multi-touch approach, right? And it's something that I think B2B marketers can take from B2C marketing, right? Where you'll see a lot on, Allstate ads, right? You've got that mayhem character that's there. You see him, you hear him on the screen, you instantly recognize and associate him with that brand. I think B2B brands can find the right person in your organization that's got a strong voice, that gets energy from these things, right? That's not everybody. So it is a little bit, I think, tougher sometimes to find that right person, and then to free them up from maybe some of the other things they're working on, right? It's typically, we see that the person who's got this strong voice and this interest is great in a lot of other areas. So they're getting pulled really thin across the organization. So prioritizing, if that's a focus for your business, prioritizing their time for that so that they can do it and do it really well.
Yeah, good advice. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a C-suite person, right? I think that sometimes that's a misnomer. Yeah.
I think sometimes it can be, but we've seen, it be people in their late 20s, early 30s, right? That are, have kind of fresh ideas, also are poised and polished, but not too polished, because engineers really don't all this time respond to super polished, right? They want to understand the nuts and bolts. So it's still got to be somebody who's engaging and great to listen to, but also can go into the technical depth of the solution as well. So it's a unique individual. Like I said, when you find that person, do everything you can to keep them on your team and set them up for success. Because I think you're right, having that person out there front and center that can speak to your brand really differentiates you, especially for services companies, right? Your people are your differentiator. And so having really strong people with a unique voice is a huge differentiation tool for brands.
And, sometimes we hear people say, oh, but I'm so afraid they'll leave and then we have to start all over. But the good news is, if someone leaves, you still have the opportunity to tap into their new community. And it's although it is a loss for your company personally, there's some good that comes out of that too. If someone moving on can refer people back to you, expand the network.
I 100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. The other thing that you see a lot at B2C is utilizing influencers, right? That are either independent people or they work for a different brand that can help be an advocate for you. And it's a little trickier for B2B, right? Because it has to be someone ideally that's technical, that has a strong tie. And at IMS, the Industrial Marketing Summit last year, we had Heatcraft Refrigeration talked about how they used an influencer, and it was somebody who was an installer of their products who was creating videos that were just how-to videos, but they were all centered upon their products. And so they liked what this person had going on, so they invited him to corporate and had him tour the manufacturing line, and they brought him into trade shows. And so they invented their own relationship. It wasn't waiting around for some influencer to raise their hand and solicit them. It was just this organic thing that happens. So, keep your eyes open for opportunities like that.
And that's super differentiating, right? I mean, that's something that not a lot of people are doing. It's unique. And so you stand out. And I think anytime you have somebody outside your company talking about your brand and what you do, that really strengthens it, right? As we can talk all we want about our own brands, but hearing back in the customer voice how they experienced your brand, I think is really impactful. And that reminds me that when you're building this content and this credibility, in order to really create differentiated, authentic content, you need that voice of customer. So this year we've seen a lot of customers coming to us wanting voice of customer interviews, customer satisfaction surveys. One thing we've started experimenting with too is launching closed loss surveys, right? This can be a gold mine of information about why you lost an opportunity. Was it price? Was it your offering? Was it timing? Was it the economy? Understanding all these things that are impacting your buyers really helps you, again, hone your message, develop your content. Having original research, market research, deep subject matter interviews. These are things that AI and large language models can't replicate or do for you. And these are the things that will absolutely help you stand out.
Good advice. Okay. So if you have a marketer listening, they have probably limited budget, limited time. If they could pick like one thing, what should they focus on in 2026? I know this is tough, like to pick one thing.
I know. I think
make a big difference.
I think again, it's to stand out in this sea of sameness. You have to be impossible to confuse. So thinking through, if a buyer can swap your name out with a competitor's and nothing changes, then you haven't differentiated yet. And so that's the biggest thing I think people can focus on is look at what you're doing, think about your strengths, and what can you differentiate and go to market with better than you've ever done before. And I think that's going to be the winning strategy for 2026.
Okay, I love it. Well, Lee, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. If people want to connect with you, where can they do that?
Can do it on LinkedIn. They can email me.
And it's Lee Chapman, Lee, and we'll put a link to your bio in the show notes. And then also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Industrial Marketing Summit, which is coming up March 3rd through 5th in Austin, Texas, and registration is open. And we'd love for you to join us. So, in fact, if you DM me before the end of the year, I have a discount code that I can share with you. So go ahead, sign up. We'd love to see you there in Austin. And again, it's the industrialmarketingsummit.com.
Thanks for joining me today on Content Marketing Engineered. For show notes, including links to resources, visit TREWmarketing.com/podcast. While there, you can subscribe to our blog and our e-newsletter and order a copy of my book, Content Marketing Engineered. Also, I would love your reviews on this podcast. So please, when you get a chance, subscribe and leave me your review on your favorite podcast subscription platform. Thanks and have a great day.